we're gonna have to start with the word Sasquatch. This is the name of the alleged creature that we call Bigfoot, but it's also the name of a much older figure in Native American folklore. The word Sasquatch comes from the Salish language and means something like wild man or hairy man. And in many indigenous cultures, this is a being that lives in the woods, avoiding humans at all costs. These stories are not new. There are cave paintings depicting what might be Bigfoot-like creatures dating back thousands of years. And we even have written records of these beings from missionaries who encountered the Salish people in the 1800s. In one account from a Jesuit missionary named Father J.B. Labat, he says that the natives told him about a wild man that lived in the area and was covered in hair. He wrote, "The shape of the animal reminds me a great deal of men, but it walks on 2 legs, being very hairy. It is so strong that no man can stand against it." So this has been a well-known phenomenon for quite some time. And supposedly there are hundreds of Native American tribes with Sasquatch stories. However, there seems to be more evidence of these stories in British Columbia than anywhere else. The most famous case of a Sasquatch sighting in this region came in 1924, when a group of lumberjacks claimed to have seen a large, hairy creature while working near Mount Baker, Washington. This would later become known as the Bluff Creek Incident. And according to one of the witnesses, they came across a large footprint that measured over 16 inches long. Then later on, some plaster casts were made of the footprints. And today those casts are held in a museum in Humboldt, California. We don't know if these are genuine Bigfoot casts or not, but the story behind them is so interesting that they were even featured on an episode of the TV show Ancient Aliens. Now, aside from this, we have other reports of large footprints being found in places like South Africa and Australia. And apparently, back in the Pleistocene epoch, these were considered to be the footprints of giants. However, most scientists argue that these footprints were made by early humans walking on the edges of their toes. So now let's fast forward to the 1950s and 60s, because that's when the Bigfoot craze really started taking off. In October of 1958, the editor of the Humboldt Standard newspaper published an article that detailed a large, hairy man-like creature that had been spotted in the Bluff Creek area, and this revived interest in the earlier lumberjack story. Then just 3 months later, we have a story in the Santa Cruz Sentinel that talks about a deputy sheriff who investigated a series of large footprints in the Ben Lomond area. Unfortunately, the footprints were too soft to cast and we have no record of what they looked like. But the deputy said that if he had to guess, he'd say the person who made them was about 7 feet tall. Around the same time, we have another story from Northern California, but this time we have actual plaster casts of the footprints. So what we do know is that they were 15 inches wide and 23.5 inches long, which is very similar to the Bluff Creek prints. Now, for a while, people thought that maybe the same mysterious creature had left both sets of prints. But then in 1960, some more tracks were found nearby, and they were much smaller. They measured only 11 inches long, which ruled out the theory that this was the same creature. However, this particular set of tracks ended up leading and inside this cave, they found some crude stone tools. Now, at first, this was thought to be evidence of Bigfoot using tools. But after further analysis, it seemed much more likely that these tools belonged to some early Native Americans. Today, these are referred to as the Dana Cave artifacts. And many believe that they were used as part of a hoax in order to drum up publicity for the Bigfoot craze. Now, when it comes to Bigfoot sightings during this time period, there's probably no story more famous than the Patterson-Gimlin film. On October 6, 1967, 2 amateur cryptozoologists named Roger Patterson and Gilman were traveling through the Bluff Creek area when they reportedly saw a female Bigfoot and her baby. And they followed them for about an hour, until they were able to get a good look at their footprints. Then they returned to the area the next day with a helicopter, and that's when they got the film footage. And I'm sure many of you have seen this footage by now. In fact, I think it is safe to say that this is the most widely seen piece of evidence that we have for the existence of Bigfoot. Now, it took a few years for this footage to gain widespread attention. But once it was released to the public in 1976, the media went wild. Some argued that this was the smoking gun that proved Bigfoot was real, while others said that it was nothing but a clever hoax. As for the people who captured the film, they stuck to their story until they died. And apparently, the original film was destroyed in a fire. However, copies of the footage still exist, and there are plenty of videos of people trying to debunk it. For example, in 1978, filmmaker John Green claimed that he had debunked the Patterson-Gimlin film and proved that it was nothing but a human in a gorilla suit. His theory was that these two people were trying to sell their story and the footage to make a buck. Then, in 1982, a journalist named Peter Bryan attempted to recreate the Bigfoot walk, and he did it wearing a gorilla suit. And surprisingly, his footprints matched the plaster casts that had been taken from the Bluff Creek site. Now, admittedly, the Bryan experiment had some flaws. For one, he was using modern-day gorilla suits, which could have looked much different than what was available in the 1960s. But perhaps the biggest flaw was that he didn't take the time to analyze soil composition and plant life along his walking path. So it's possible that he was replicating the movement of a human wearing a gorilla suit. But that doesn't necessarily mean that's what the prints in the Patterson-Gimlin film are replicating. That said, there's also no denying that some of the footage does seem suspicious. For example, the trees and bushes in the background don't appear to bend or break under the weight of a 600-pound ape. And there is even a report from someone who worked on the film saying that when they watched it on a bigger screen, they noticed what appeared to be the shadow of a film crew behind the camera. Now, some try to write this off as confirmation bias, but it's hard to deny that it makes things a little bit more complicated. Ultimately, we may never know exactly what this footage depicts, but what we do know is that it helped to launch Bigfoot into mainstream culture. Since then, there have been countless blurry photos, videos, and alleged sightings, but none of it is nearly as compelling as the Patterson-Gimlin film. Now, I should mention that even though Bigfoot hasn't yet been proven to exist, we do know that there are plenty of undiscovered animals out there. Just last year, a new species of mini marsupial lion was discovered in the jungles of New Guinea. And according to National Geographic, there are potentially millions of undiscovered species living on our planet today. Many of these will likely be small animals, like insects or reptiles. But who's to say for certain? Maybe there is a population of large primates living deep in the forests of North America, and we've just never found them. Or maybe we already have found them. Maybe the Patterson-Gimlin film is genuine, and there is a perfectly logical explanation that we have unthought of yet. Until we find physical evidence like bones or DNA, the question of Bigfoot's existence will remain unanswered. But what do you think? Do you think Bigfoot is real? Let me know in the comments below. And while you're down there, be sure to give this video a thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe for more videos like this. Thanks for watching.